The movie begins with a little girl that has an extraordinary mind, capable of solving complex mathematical problems in seconds.
Give me the numbers.
And memorizing any series of numbers she comes across. Her memory is flawless. Once she sees a number, she never forgets it. One afternoon, while walking home with her friends, a group of men suddenly grabs her off the street and drags her away. She is taken to Han, a ruthless Chinese mafia leader who has big plans for her unique skills. Han's criminal enterprise is drowning in digital footprints, making it too easy to track. To stay ahead of authorities, he needs someone who can store and process his most valuable information the old-fashioned way, inside their head. May is perfect for the job. At first, May refuses to cooperate. She's just a child, and she doesn't want to be a part of any of this. She realizes she has no choice. Under the supervision of a trusted gang member, Chong, she is taken to New York and forced to live as his daughter. Hidden in plain sight, she becomes an invisible yet powerful tool in Han's criminal empire. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, Luke, a former cop turned underground cage fighter, is in the middle of a brutal match. The fight is rigged. He's supposed to lose, but instinct kicks in.
How dare you come here, you
Enough!
And he accidentally lands a knockout punch, sending his opponent into a coma.
You should be in jail! You should be in jail!
The unintended victory costs the Russian mafia boss, Emil, millions of dollars in lost bets. Luke barely has time to react before he realizes what this means.
Oh, come on, what are you, crazy, man?
Emil doesn't just take financial losses, he takes revenge. Panicked, Luke rushes home, but he's too late. The Russians have already been there. Vasily, Emil's sadistic son, has murdered Luke's pregnant wife. The loss shatters him. He has the skills to fight back, but he doesn't. Maybe it's the shock. Maybe it's knowing that nothing will bring her back. The gangsters don't kill him, but they do something worse. They promise that anyone he ever speaks to or even interacts with will suffer the same fate. With no family, no home, and no reason to fight, Luke disappears into the streets of New York. For the next year, he becomes just another homeless man wandering Manhattan, a shadow of who he once was. While Luke's world crumbles, May's life continues under the watchful eye of the gang. Every week, Chong takes her on rounds through Chinatown, where she memorizes the financial figures of every business under their control. The gang demands payments from shop owners based on their profits, and May's flawless calculations make sure no one cheats them.
It's losing money.
Over time, she begins to understand how power and money move through the underground world. She might be just a child, but in Han's empire, she is one of the most valuable assets he owns. Luke spends his nights in a rundown, chaotic homeless shelter where survival is more about luck than anything else. One evening, he meets a man with no shoes and severely infected feet. Feeling sorry for him, Luke gives him his own pair of new shoes. But the next morning, he wakes up to find the man dead, his throat slit overnight, the shoes stolen. It's just another reminder of how brutal and unforgiving his life has become. Meanwhile, across the city, May receives devastating news. A woman working with Chong wakes her in the middle of the night to tell her that her mother has died back in China. She had been seriously ill in the hospital, and now May is truly alone. The next morning, Han arrives in New York for the first time since sending May there. He brings with him a slip of paper with a sequence of numbers, which he orders May to memorize. She does it in under 10 seconds, effortlessly locking it away in her perfect memory. Whatever these numbers mean, they're important. Han burns the paper to ashes right in front of her. Now, only May knows the code. Chang immediately prepares to take her to another location where she will be given a second set of numbers to remember. But before they can complete the mission, the Russian mafia strikes. Emil, the same gangster responsible for killing Luke's wife, leads the ambush. A violent shootout erupts, and the Chinese gangsters are quickly overwhelmed. May is snatched away by the Russians, now a captive in their world. Meanwhile, Luke's day is getting worse by the minute. A random stranger steals his breakfast money, leaving him empty-handed once again. While wandering the streets, he unexpectedly runs into a former colleague from his days as a cop. The man immediately recognizes him and, along with a few other corrupt officers, drags Luke to an abandoned building. Years ago, Luke exposed their dirty dealings with local gangsters, getting them into serious trouble. They haven't forgotten. They beat him relentlessly, mocking him for what he's become. But Luke doesn't fight back. He takes the hits, staying completely silent. Finally, one of them tosses him a gun, mocking him, trying to push him over the edge emotionally. Luke stares at the weapon but refuses. Without a word, he turns and walks away.
What are you waiting for?
At the same time, May is brought before Emil, who demands that she reveal the numbers. She soon realizes that the woman who told her about her mother's death had been working for Emil all along. The betrayal stings, but May doesn't flinch. The woman tries to convince May to cooperate, but the girl calmly tells her that she's about to die.
真是个笨女人，你不知道生意，你给他们要的东西，现在他们要杀了你。
A second later, the Russians eliminate her without hesitation. She's outlived her usefulness. May knows she's next if she talks, so she stays silent. Just then, Captain Wolf, a corrupt cop and one of Luke's old colleagues, storms into the hideout. But he's not here to enforce the law, he's here on Han's orders. Emil, always the businessman, immediately offers Wolf double whatever the Chinese Mafia is paying him. Without hesitation, Wolf takes the bribe and leaves. By the time the corrupt officer exits, May is already gone, but both the Russian and Chinese gangs quickly realize she's missing and start hunting for her, desperate to find her before the other does. Eventually, May makes it to the subway station, where Luke is standing near the edge, lost in thought. Just as he's about to take that final step, he locks eyes with the terrified little girl. For the first time in a year, something inside him stirs. He sees the fear in her eyes, the way she's running from something or someone, and then he spots them. The same Russian gangsters who murdered his wife are closing in on her. May, trying to escape, jumps onto a subway train, but the gangsters see her at the last second and follow. Without thinking, Luke latches onto the moving train, determined to save her. One by one, he eliminates the Russians, taking them out with brutal efficiency. One of them, barely clinging to life, recognizes him as the man they beat up a year ago. He can't believe what he's seeing.
You? The garbage collector?
Bad information. I never collected garbage. I disposed of it.
How is the same broken man now tearing through their people like an unstoppable force? Before he gets an answer, Luke finishes him off. Finally, Luke reaches May. But before he can speak, the subway screeches to a halt at the next station. Panicked, she bolts, vanishing into the crowd. To her, he's just another man chasing her. As Luke searches for her, he overhears a red alert being broadcasted across police radios. The message is clear. The cops are looking for the girl, too. And knowing how deep corruption runs in the department, he realizes they won't take her to safety. They'll hand her straight over to the Mafia. A few blocks away, two of the corrupt cops who attacked Luke earlier spot May and move to grab her. But before they can take her away, Luke arrives. This time, he doesn't stay silent. He takes them both down in seconds, proving that he was only keeping quiet because he wanted to. May is still unsure about trusting him, but when the Russian Mafia arrives, she has no choice. She jumps into a car with Luke, and in an instant, they're speeding through the streets of Manhattan with a fleet of Russian gangsters hot on their tail. Luke takes down all the Russians, loots their wallets, and books a 5-star hotel for himself and May. Somewhere else, Captain Wolf gets wind of May's abduction, but is stunned to learn that it wasn't the Mafia who took her. It was Luke. After years of staying off the radar, Luke is suddenly making big moves, and the captain has no idea what he's planning. Meanwhile, in the luxurious hotel suite, May starts to trust Luke. She finally opens up about the numbers she memorized. Looking at the sequence, Luke quickly realizes that it's a safe combination. But there's a catch. May was supposed to memorize a second set of numbers before the Russians attacked, which means there are 2 safes, each containing something valuable. Whatever the Chinese Mafia is trading, it must be big. Before they can dig deeper, Cheng tracks May through a hidden device in her phone. He and his men storm the hotel, guns blazing. Chaos erupts as guests scream and scramble for cover. Luke fights back, but in the chaos, he gets separated from May. Cheng snatches her while Luke barely escapes with his life. Knowing he can't abandon the girl, Luke devises a plan. Using a stolen phone, he calls Vasily, the same man who murdered his wife. Posing as a Russian gangster, Luke claims he has the coveted safe combination. Vasily, hungry for leverage, takes the bait and summons Luke to a casino. Elsewhere, the city's mayor calls Captain Wolf into his office. It turns out the mayor and his boyfriend Alex are just as dirty as everyone else in this web of corruption. As they discuss the recent shootings, a shocking truth comes to light. Luke was never just a cop. He was a CIA operative embedded in the NYPD after 9/11, tasked with eliminating high-level crime figures to impose order. His former partner Alex was also part of the operation but chose a different path. While Luke walked away after exposing the captain's dirty dealings, Alex stayed behind, climbing the political ladder by seducing the mayor. Now, with Luke back in action, the captain realizes he severely underestimated him. The so-called washed-up loser he and his men beat down is, in fact, the deadliest threat they've ever faced. When the mayor learns that Luke and May are together, he visibly panics. His reaction suggests he knows something about the safes and what's inside them. Meanwhile, May is taken back to Han, who demands to know if she shared the combination with anyone. She lies, claiming she pretended not to understand English.
我假装不会说英文，也听不懂。
At the same time, Cheng calls Alex, confirming that they have the girl and the deal can proceed. It turns out the Chinese Mafia's trade partner isn't just anyone. It's the mayor and his corrupt boyfriend, Alex. They're essentially gambling with the unknown contents of their safes, treating them like high-stakes mystery boxes. Meanwhile, Luke arrives at the casino, walking straight into enemy territory. But he's not here to negotiate. He ambushes Vasily's men, taking them hostage. With a gun to their heads, he prepares to use them as leverage against their boss, Emil. The tables have turned, and Luke is about to take control of the entire game. Luke calls Emil and puts him in a tough spot, his son's life in exchange for the truth. Emil, unwilling to risk Vasily's fate, spills everything. The safe held by the Chinese gang contains $30 million in cash, while the one in the mayor's possession holds something just as valuable. The trade was supposed to be simple, money for whatever was inside the second safe. But when the Russians barged in and took May, the deal fell apart. Now that the Chinese have her back, the trade is back on track. Chang prepares to meet Alex and finalize the exchange, which means Luke has only one way to stop them. He needs to get to the $30 million before the deal goes down. The problem? The safe is buried deep inside Chinatown, guarded by the most dangerous Chinese gangsters in the city. Luke knows he can't do this alone, so he turns to an unlikely group. His former, corrupt cop colleagues. They agree to help, but only because of the money. Greed is a powerful motivator. Together, they storm the hideout, unleashing an all-out war. Gangsters and cops fall one by one, but Luke keeps pushing forward, cutting through the chaos. By the time they reach the safe, most of the crew is dead, but not Luke, because he still has unfinished business. When he finally cracks open the locker, he turns on the cops, gunning them down before they can betray him. The only survivors are Vasily and Captain Wolf, whom he takes hostage. With the money secured, Luke heads straight for the mayor's office. On the way, he calls Alex, now fully in control of the situation. He demands to know what's inside the second safe, and Alex has no choice but to comply. The truth is worse than expected. The safe holds a hard drive with information on every major crime syndicate in New York. The mayor had planned to sell it to the Chinese, collect the $30 million, and let the gangs tear each other apart. Alex was supposed to complete the deal with Cheng, but with the money now in Luke's hands, everything is falling apart. Realizing he has no other option, Alex flips the script. Instead of going to the Chinese, he kills Chang and his henchmen, then takes May with him to meet Luke. Meanwhile, Luke breaks into the mayor's office. The corrupt politician tries to hold his ground, but with everything crumbling around him, he has no leverage left. Left with no choice, he hands Luke the hard drive. Luke knocks him out cold and heads to the final meeting spot. Now holding both the money and the hard drive, Luke is in complete control. But Alex still has an ace up his sleeve, May. When they finally come face to face, Alex proposes a simple exchange. May for the money, but Luke has other plans. He suggests they settle it the old-fashioned way with fists. Alex prepares for a fight, but before he can even take a swing, Mo pulls a gun and shoots him in the leg. Luke doesn't waste the opportunity. He finishes Alex off without hesitation. Finally, Luke and May are free, but Luke knows their problems won't disappear overnight. For May's safety, he lets Captain Wolf go, handing him $50,000 as a bribe to stay quiet. He also releases Vasily, ensuring the Russians won't come after them. That just leaves Han, the Chinese Mafia boss, who has now lost both the money and the girl. Rather than leave loose ends, Luke sends Han the rest of the money, making it clear that May is off limits.
我们的麻烦，我们也不会找您的。
But just in case, Luke takes extra precautions. He makes multiple copies of the hard drive and hides them throughout the city. If anyone tries to come after them, the drive becomes their insurance policy, a weapon they can use to take down some very powerful people. In the final scene, Luke and May hit the road, driving towards Seattle, ready to start a new life, free at last.